Awesome. What's up, guys?
Let's go.
Munir Lazuni. Let's go. This is Munir Lazuni with the Driven Men's Podcast, episode number 4, live here in San Diego and New Zealand with Mr. Dan Suckling. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dan Suckling is an online coach. He has been online coaching for at least 4 years, and he has been in the industry for at least 10 years. And this man coaches thousands of moms across New Zealand to help them find self-love within themselves and improve various different things. So I've learned a lot from Dan. I really look up to this guy. And Dan, I just wanted to get you on here. Thanks so much for being here. Let's hear a little bit from you. How did you get into the whole coaching business and everything else?
Yeah, so a bit about my story is, throughout my younger years, I used to play league up until I was about 14 and then moved to New Zealand from Australia. I was actually born in Australia. And because I'm 5 foot fuck all, a lot of the guys were way too big. And so I was like, holy shit, I can't actually compete. I'm too young. I'm too short. So then I went to boxing where I could fight people my weight. And I remember at the time I was 14 years old at 46 kilos. And so I was just fighting like 10-year-olds and no, it wasn't too bad. But that was awesome. That was really, really good. And, mum was always in and out of hospital. And it was just like the norm, like, ambulances would come every couple of months. And it was just like the normal thing. And then so one day I was prepping for a fight. I was actually at a tournament about to jump in the ring. And Dad pulled me outside and said that she had passed away. And my life had changed from that point. I went down an emotional spiral. I was addicted to drugs for years and years and years. I felt really depressed. And it took a lot for me to actually pull myself out of that. And then so what ended up happening from there is I started training in the gym. Mum was actually an international bodybuilder at the time. She flew all around the world competing. And so my goal was to jump on stage and sort of walk in those shoes, like sort of fulfill that legacy. And so I did it. I trained for a comp. I went to Auckland Champs, did really well. And then sort of figured that, this bodybuilding thing isn't really for me. And then I went down this path of studying nutrition. And then I became a certified nutritionist. And then I started training inside of the gym, coaching people through nutrition and weight loss and stuff like that. And then I went down the path of human psychology, human behaviors, studying NLP to understand like why we do the things that we do. And then it was like a switch went off in my head, like seeing what mum went through and why she was feeling the way she was feeling, like feeling so unfulfilled, putting her needs on the back burner, feeling so stressed out all the time. And I really wish that I had that perspective now that I had back then, because I think that things would have been a hell of a lot different. And then so that's led me to create this movement of coaching mums who are lacking love for themselves, mums who may have self-doubt, whether that's through weight gain or whether that's stemmed back from the past, things that happened throughout childhood or something someone said or something someone did, where we have actually adopted an identity and a deeply ingrained belief about ourselves that's really hard to break. Just like any other new habit or new thing that you're trying to implement in your life, there's always going to be that resistance. And I think that, it's something that doesn't really get talked about a lot inside of this industry, is so many mums feeling unfulfilled, lacking love for themselves, and looking after everyone else's needs before their own. And I truly believe that society has conditioned so many mums to believe that, if they're not looking after everyone else's needs before their own, that they're being a bad mum sort of thing. And I'm just like, fuck that. It's bullshit. You know what I mean? So, and here we are later. We've coached over 1,000 mums, and it's been an incredible journey. But I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you've done some amazing things in your community. And I think that's a big thing too, is like a lot of what society teaches us is that we have to put other people's needs before our own. But the thing is, whenever you get on an airplane, they always tell you, put your oxygen mask on first before you put your kids on, because you do have to take care of yourself to best take care of others. And I think a lot of men get wrapped up in this too. And honestly, at least for the men I work with, and you've probably seen this with some of the mothers you've worked with as well, but a lot of people use their kids or their family as an excuse because they say, oh, I don't have time to work out. I got to take care of my family. But it's like, well, you actually got to take care of yourself to take care of your family. And actually, one of the coaches who we know, LJ, he posted a really great post for the dads he works with, where he said that the whole idea of taking care of your family first is like a shining armor that you put on every single day and you feel good about. The problem is that armor gets tighter and tighter as you gain weight. And before you know it, you suffocate yourself. What's that?
Most definitely, man. It's like pouring water into a cup and the cup's got a hole in it. You can't pour energy into others if you're not pouring energy into yourself. And I think we live in a world right now where so many mums feel guilty and selfish for putting their needs first. They think their kids have to come first. Everything around them has to come first. because, ever since they became a mum, all of a sudden priorities, responsibilities changed, and they feel selfish for putting their needs first. But I would go as far as saying that it's selfish to not put yourself first. Because, if you're happy, if you're confident, if you've got more energy, if you're more fulfilled, less stressed, like, is it really selfish? Because everyone's going to benefit from that. Do you know what I mean? It's selfish not putting yourself first because you're not able to actually give the best version of you to your loved ones. And that's crazy.
100%. And it's so true that when you do optimize yourself, you optimize the way that you can serve people around you. So Dan, like, what ends up happening when people have like these mental barriers and these stories? Because I mean, I hear you talk about stories, rituals, routines quite a bit, and how people get wrapped up in this old identity that they once had. Tell us a little bit more about how that manifests itself and what one should do in this situation.
Most definitely. Well, basically, a lot of mums that come into our program, they have a lot of self-doubt, lack of self-belief. And, these things don't come from just out of the blue. It happens because ever since the day we were born, there's so many life events, so many experiences, so much information that comes through all of our five senses. And unconsciously, it has shaped our identity, the way that we speak, the things that we focus on, the stories that we tell ourselves, the things that we believe. And ultimately, it shapes the way that we see the world. And these things are like, it affects our mental state, our physiology, and it's determining our outcomes and our results inside of our life. And for so many people, not only just mums, but for so many people, they'll label themselves to be a certain thing through their I am statements, saying things like, I am lazy, I am stressed, I am broke, and all these different things where it's an old identity from the past that doesn't actually serve you. And for a lot of people, they bring the past into the present and walk into the future wearing that like a mask. And the fact of the matter is, like, who you were is not who you are right now. And who you are right now is whoever you decide to be in this very moment. Like, change can happen in an instant, but because your actions are backed by your beliefs, if you don't believe that change can happen in an instant, then it won't. You know what I mean? And I remember being there at a summit with one of my old mentors, and he was saying, like, Dan, are you depressed? And no, I'm not depressed right now. Because I said, yeah, I'm depressed. And he said, are you depressed right now? And I said, well, not right now, no. And he goes, oh, so you were depressed like 2 seconds ago, 2 minutes ago. And this light switch went off in my head, and I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, Dan, why do you keep saying that you're depressed? And it's like, because you keep telling your friends that you're depressed. Your parents tell their friends you're depressed. You talk about the counselor about being depressed, and you keep reaffirming this identity and this label on yourself where nothing's going to change. And I'm not saying that it's as easy as removing an I am statement and clearing depression, but the very first step to overcoming these things, to shifting your identity, is to stop labeling yourself to be a negative identity that's not actually serving you.
100%. And that's a really powerful way of thinking for me as well. It's very insightful for myself, where whenever I see limiting beliefs with myself, it's so easy to identify with it and attach your identity to it. That's kind of one thing actually early on in my own journey that really helped me a lot. Was I used to feel like a very, very anxious person. I used to be a very anxious person. I used to tell myself, I am anxious, I am depressed. And this became an identity, right? Because I am statements are identity statements. And one of the most liberating things for me was a quick little reframe that I read in a blog, which is, I have a tendency to be X, Y, and Z, right? And so when I started saying, I have a tendency to be anxious, I have a tendency to be depressed, I tend to be nervous around girls and whatever other limiting areas I had in my life, I was able to actually start realizing that those things can be changed and that growth and change are possible, again, if you believe they're possible. And that's, yep. And that's the almost fucked up paradox, where if you surround yourself with closed-minded people who have a fixed mindset that you cannot change, the type of people who, when they see you a year later and you've grown, they say, wow, you've changed, as if it's a bad thing. But the reality is, you're supposed to. I saw this really funny meme that was a picture of a caterpillar and a butterfly having coffee together. The caterpillar says, you've changed. The butterfly says, we're supposed to. And it really is true.
That was great. That's great. And I think the biggest problem in the world right now, especially in the fitness industry, is that, there is so much information coming to us. Like, we're drowning in information. And because there's so much information, like, you could jump on Google right now, type in how to put on lean mass, type in how to lose weight, and there'll be a million different things. And what that's doing, it's actually creating more confusion, more overwhelm than ever, because no one knows what the right path is. It's like, well, fuck, do I do fasting or keto or Atkins or paleo? And there's so many different things, right? And I think it's this confusion and this overwhelm that creates so much uncertainty. And as you know, Manir, it's like, you won't take action unless you're certain, and you won't get results unless you take action. And it's this one big loop. And, you know, everyone's on the search for the external things. You know, what sort of exercise program do I do? What sort of nutrition plan do I do? And whilst these things are important, I truly feel like it's only 20% of the equation. Like the other 80% is the person that you need to become, you know, the habits, the routines, the rituals, all these internal things, everything that's actually influencing and governing our actions every single day. Because at the end of the day, it's like you could have the best diet program and the best exercise program in the world, but it really means jack shit, because if you can't stay consistent with it, and if you don't have the right habits, routines, rituals, and if you don't become this particular type of person and work towards being that person every single day, then, you know, ultimately you're never going to be that person.
100%. And it's like everybody knows that the most reliable way to get in shape is to consistently eat properly, right? So enough protein, the right number of calories, the right foods. And people ask, like, what are the right foods? Because they're generally looking for some kind of hack, but everybody knows chicken breast is great, right? And that you can have some flexibility with it, but like if you're eating a lot of oily food all the time, you're probably getting a lot of calories. It's not ideal, but people generally have an idea, and there's so much info out there, but one has to follow consistently. And so it's more about getting yourself into the right place mentally to execute consistently than what strategy you actually use, because they all in theory work. There's science that backs up all of these theories, but if you're hopping from one to the other and never consistently executing at one because you haven't fixed the internal factors that lead to your consistency, then none of them are going to work. So that's awesome, man. So what are like some of the, what would you recommend to somebody who's trapped in like a certain way of thinking, a certain environment, a certain identity, to actually start shifting and getting themselves to the right place to start executing consistently?
Most definitely. This is something that I was talking to the mums about a lot yesterday, was that, you know, we've been painted this picture by the weight loss industry and, you know, and creating change in general, that there's a hack, that it's fast, that it's easy, that it's quick. And so what ends up happening is people come into a program with an unrealistic expectation that is misaligned with the reality of what it actually takes. And so what ends up happening is when the blueprint doesn't match the outcome that they're experiencing inside of their journey, they encounter a problem, which is inevitable. They lack motivation, which is inevitable. I lack motivation too. It's going to happen. But because we've been told that it's easy and that it's just going to be smooth sailing, you know, when people encounter a problem, they stop. You know, they tell themselves a story, they make an assumption, and they make a decision, which usually creates a negative outcome. And people need to understand that it is a long journey and they have to play the long game. And just with anything, whether it's weight loss, you know, whether it's gaining size, gaining muscle, it starts internally, like it really, really does. It doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter what sort of nutritional exercise program you have. You need the environment filled with like-minded people to, you know, raise your standards and help you break through these limiting beliefs about yourself and your capabilities, but also understanding like the things that you're labeling yourself to be that's keeping you trapped back inside of your old reality. It's massive. And I think that it's something that needs to be talked about a lot, like the I am statements, the language that we speak, like the limiting words like don't, can't, blah, 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 but, which just eliminates the start of the sentence. And saying things like, you know, I always fail when I lose weight. And that's a belief. And how's that belief serving you? And it's not really a matter of like whether or not a belief is right or wrong. One thing that I question, I ask myself every single day is like, is that useful? Like if I chose, because we all have a choice, if I chose to believe this, like, is it going to help me move forward, or is that going to keep me back where I was? You know what I mean? So it's this constant evolution of growth and learning and optimizing our standards to get to where we want to go. But no one talks about this, and no one talks about the journey being difficult because it's not sexy and it doesn't sell. And it's not what most people want to hear, but it's the truth. And I think that we need more authentic coaches out there that can actually cut through the bullshit and give people realistic expectations of what to expect inside of a journey, so that they can actually anticipate these micro failures in order to learn and grow from them to move forward.
100%, because we got to keep it 100 with ourselves. We got to keep it 100 with our clients. And we got to keep it 100 with our coaches too when we work with the coach. But yeah, one thing I really like that you say, because we're talking so much about the internal versus the external. One thing I like that you say is that if supplements really were the answer to hack around doing the work, there would be one supplement that everyone would take that would work. But but there isn't. And, you know, that's why the internal is so important for people to work on and truly start to shift themselves to a place where they can execute on a consistent basis. So as far as with working on a person's mindset and mentality and really trying to remove negative beliefs and build the right kind of identity to move forward, the theme of self-love constantly comes up, the theme of leaving a legacy. And I think that's something that resonates with both the mothers that you work with. I keep wanting to say moms, but I know you say moms being in New Zealand. So saying mothers, I think that works. And the men who I work with, right? Like the men I work with, a lot of time the guys I work with are single. I do have a few married guys, but I'd say the majority of the guys I work with are single. But ultimately, like, I think everybody wants to leave some sort of a legacy. And so for the guys out there, like, if you think about your kids, how do you want them to reflect back on you as the person who you were today when they're your age? And like, you know, you're going to have love for your kids. Are you going to give yourself that same love that you have for your kids? That's something that I identified within myself, is like, there are certain things that I wouldn't want my clients to do. There are certain things that I do want my clients to do, because in a lot of ways, I almost view my clients like my kids. And when I saw myself not being consistent with those things, that was a real wake-up call and a real way of calling myself out, to realize that I got to give myself the same love that I'm giving to my clients. So Dan,
100%. It's like, and understanding, like, for these mums and dads watching this, if you're a dad watching this as well, is that the kids are always reflecting your habits, your beliefs, and the way that you operate as well. And it reminds me, back 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a mum, and she was always saying, you know, I'm really fat, like, just in the household, I'm too big for this shirt. And then one day her daughter came in, 6-year-old daughter, and said, "Mummy, I think I'm getting too fat for my clothes." And that was the moment where that mum was like, I need to fucking change right now. And understanding, like, I mean, we live in a world where we're constantly comparing ourselves to certain things. Like, there's always this contrast. And it's like, how do you know it's daytime? Because you know what nighttime looks like. How do you know what a fast car feels like? Because you've been in a slow car. And, you know, social media doesn't help. And it's really tough, especially looking around on Instagram with the perfect couple or the perfect body or the perfect relationship. And we're constantly unconsciously comparing ourselves to all of these things, where it's basically leaving us feeling irrelevant and insignificant, where we feel like we have to live up to a certain standard. And we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we beat ourselves up. And as human beings, I think that we're always the first to criticize ourselves before others criticize us. And so the understanding the fact that it is going to be a long journey, and you have to be kind to yourself. You know, you have to actually enjoy life as well. You know, it's not just about, you know, killing yourself to reach this outcome, or killing yourself to be that mum that loves herself again by losing the weight, or whatever it is for each and every single mum. But it's about enjoying the journey and enjoying life, and actually being kind to yourself, you know, making time for yourself, practicing daily habits and routines that put your needs first before others, so that you're not just running out into the noise of the day, feeling so reactive, so stressed, overwhelmed. Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's a huge point you bring up with social media. That's one of the first steps I have for my clients too, is to just accept that, hey, you're not perfect, and that's okay. Like, not everything's okay in your life, not everything's okay in mine. That's okay. Let's talk about it. Because social media, people will only show you what they want you to see. People will post their highlight reel. It's so easy to start thinking that that's everybody's reality, where everybody lives a life of no stress, no discomfort, no challenge, and all that. And just one note on that: imagine a life with no challenge. That's almost depressing, because it's like, come on, like a life where you have no chance to prove yourself and improve yourself. So that's the first step, is to accept you're not perfect, so you can stop beating yourself up. Because when you stop beating yourself up, you stop filling your mind with these negative self-beliefs that start to hold you back. Because as we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, when you have negative beliefs about the self, that starts to manifest into your reality. They become negative I am statements, and they start to actually define who you are. And so as we shift from a place in an identity of having a negative self-image, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, where we always fail, we always sabotage ourselves, we always put ourselves in a place where we feel like shit, and we start moving ourselves to become the person we want to become, the man we want to become, the mom we want to become, the mum we want to become. If you're you need to truly shift your belief systems and start creating positive I am statements, and looking at the negative I am statements and starting to problem solve and change those negative statements. And that really is one of the keys. So what are some of the positive beliefs that you recommend for your clients, Dan?
Yeah, and the huge thing around this is just like awareness, right? Like, I think because 90% of the brain is unconscious, we do so many things throughout life without even realizing it, you know. And the language that we speak and the labels that we place on ourselves and the beliefs that we have, we do these things without realizing it and without understanding that it is shaping our reality. And it's just having that conscious awareness, like before you say something, just think about how that's going to sound and realize that, holy shit, my actions are going to be backed by that. And before I say this, like, is that going to help me move forward or not? And what you'll start to notice is you'll start to notice limiting language and limiting beliefs with your friends and your family. Once you become consciously aware of this, you know, you'll catch up with a friend for a coffee and she might be talking about negative things. You know, you'll get someone that says, oh, you know, I woke up this morning and I was late for work. And then she'll start to stack it. And my cat threw up in the lounge room and, you know, got so much washing, and she'll start to focus on all these negative things. When at the end of the day, like, we all have shit to deal with. We all have problems. We all have things inside of our life, but it's all based around your perception and how you see that problem and what you choose to focus on. Because I know inside of my life, yes, there are problems. Yes, there's shit going on, but I choose not to stay immersed inside of that and talk about it and just, you know, and continue to focus on that, because I know that if I keep focusing on it, if I keep talking about it, it's going to keep reappearing inside of my life, because that's just what I'm choosing to see. You know, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. But in terms of like beliefs, understanding that the identity, the language, and the things that we focus on creates our belief system, which governs our actions. And so these things are all backing each other and they're all supporting each other. And so this is what we call filters. And it's inside of this reticular activation system, which is, you know, the gateway of how we see the world and how we create our reality. And I think that is very, very powerful, you know, understanding that we don't just do certain things for the sake of doing it. We do it because of the things that we believe, the things that we focus on, the things that we talk about, the things that we label ourselves to be. And it's all ultimately governed by our environment, you know, the people that we associate with every single day. If you're hanging out with Sally and every Friday Sally gets fucking $50 KFC takeaways, eventually you're going to adopt that habit because you don't want to lose the connection. It's, as humans, we operate as mammals, and we are mammals, and we operate as like as a herd, you know. And it's like, if you're hanging around with negative people that aren't looking after their bodies, that aren't where you want to be, you know, if you're demonstrating behaviors that's different to your herd, they're going to pull you back in because you should be grazing with them. You know, they're going to see that as socially unacceptable behavior. And so just like, you know, inside of your program, Munir, and inside of my program as well, the importance of having this environment, you know, where we're shifting people's beliefs and shifting people's identity and raising their standards, so that when we bring a new mum in, you know, it's really, really difficult for her to go back to her old ways, because this new environment is so uplifting and so different to what she's used to.
Big time. Yeah, a lot of people are coming in from a very negative environment, because I think really no matter who you surround yourself by in this world, you are going to have to deal with average, normal people on a daily basis. And unfortunately, average, normal people tend to have a very maladaptive or negative worldview. The type of people who instead of asking, you know, how are you doing, they say, how's life treating you, right? And it's like, oh, life's treating you, huh? You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
and the thing is, like, right now, like, look on the news, look in the newspaper, like, people are feeding off negativity. They never talk about positive shit on the news. It's like, that's why I don't watch it, you know. And I think people just feed off it, and they love the negativity, but it's what they're used to, you know.
100%. Yeah. People just really do have that negative attitude. And so as you start to build within yourself this really secure, stable, powerful, and confident nucleus, you're able to deal with negative people like that without being pulled into their negativity, without allowing them to drain you, because you've got your tribe. And that's what we see with our clients, is we create this tribe where there's such a strong identity as being a positive person who says no to draining people, who says no to stressful, negative people, who says yes to positivity, and who knows how to counter these negative people. Where if somebody comes up to you with the whole idea, how's life treating you? And instead of responding the way they want you to respond, they expect you to respond, like, it's going all right. You say, life's treating me great, you know? And you start to actually shift and view yourself as being somebody who practices gratitude, abundance, instead of complaining and living in scarcity. You start to shift yourself to being somebody with a positive belief system that brings about the positive results you want in your life. No matter how fucked everything is around you, look, everything is always going to be fucked to some degree, and you can choose to focus on that. But within that, there's always going to be greatness to some degree. And if you choose to focus on that, it expands. What you focus on truly does expand.
Most definitely. And back on the topic of self-love and stuff like that, like, one thing that I see a lot is that, you know, just like you're saying, a friend says, hey, how you going? And the natural response is, yeah, I'm good. But for so many people, they wear a mask and we're taught to suppress our emotions because we're told that it's weak. You know, we're afraid of judgment about talking about how we're really feeling. And it's like, are you really okay? Like, are you really okay? Are you genuinely happy? Because for a lot of the mums that I coach, when they go out in public, they feel like people are staring at them, judging them, criticizing them, and they sort of wear a mask to stay strong. And, you know, suppressing emotions is the worst thing that you can do, because it stacks in your mind, stacks. It reaches a threshold and then fucking boom. And that's when things get really bad. So, you know, having the courage to be able to speak your truth and express your emotions and how you're really feeling, understanding that there is strength. There's strength in vulnerability. You know, it's not weak. In fact, it's fucking strong, and it's difficult. And whilst most people are living their lives wearing a mask and feeling unhappy, but showing that they're happy on the outside, removing the mask is going to allow you to be genuinely happy. You know, a real smile when you're out and about, you know, without those sorts of, you know, people are judging me or criticizing me, because you get to the point where you don't really care about what other people think about you. You are so certain within yourself that everything else is irrelevant, you know, and understanding that everyone else's negative thoughts or opinions about you is simply a reflection upon their own insecurities and upon their own beliefs about themselves. And that's powerful.
100%. Yeah. And I really love to see that, you know, within our clients as they shift and they start to develop just the confidence from being somebody who takes care of themselves. Because if you think about it, when somebody's taking care of their nutrition, if they're training, or they're doing it consistently as a part of their identity and something they actually fall in love with the process of doing, they're creating self-confidence because they're sticking to it, and they're showing themselves self-love by looking after themselves and taking care of themselves. And you start to create this feeling of gratitude and well-being within yourself that really does carry everywhere you go. And I really like the point you mentioned about there being strength and vulnerability, because I think some people watching this might think like, oh, well, he works with moms, but as a man, you always got to put up that image, right? And yeah, you do need to be strong, but at the same time, you can't lie to yourself, because like Dan said, as a human being, if you are always put on a mask, you stack it. And you got to be able to first be honest with yourself. When you're honest with yourself, then you can work through things and show up as the strong man that you need to be for your family, without ultimately faltering and falling into this pit of negativity where you're constantly putting on a mask. But people can really feel that mask. People can tell that it's not authentic. And when people see you and you're behaving in this way where people can tell you're not fully present, people can tell that there's something bothering you, and you know what, some people can't even tell. Some people may even just view that as you not being at your full capacity. But when you're at your full capacity, that's when you can tell, right?
And it takes that ownership too. Do you know what I mean? And steering away from this victim mentality where it's like, you know, when I was growing up, I had a lot of bad things happen to me. You know, my mum and my dad both had rough childhoods and moved to Australia to get away from, you know, their past, and then moved back to New Zealand. And I got jumped when I first moved there, and I got sent to a different country by myself at 16 years old and got my house shot at, and then mum passed away and all these different things. But you know, if I had have sat back and blamed this, that, and the other, or I'm not where I want to be because of my mum passing away, or because I moved to a different country, or all these different things, then all I'm doing is I'm giving my power and putting it in the hands of someone else. You know, so once you begin to take ownership, it's like now you have the power to change your current circumstances, because it's easy, it's comfortable to blame something else or someone else, but it's difficult to actually take ownership and be like, fuck, I take responsibility for everything that happens inside of my life. And now I am liberated to be able to change my current situation from taking ownership.
Cool. And it's a choice. It's kind of like you can present someone with two options. You can take the easy way and blame things on other people, where you don't have to feel bad about yourself because nothing is your fault. The problem with that, though, is if you make that choice, you don't have the power to change. So that's choice number one for you guys watching this at home. Choice number two is you take ownership, you embrace the uncomfortable, you take responsibility, and you deal with a little bit of that, I guess you could call it an ego haircut. It's a little haircut for your ego to realize that, hey, if you're fucked, it's your fault, but that's okay, because that gives you the power to actually take 100% control of it and change it. So the choice really comes down to, do you want to not be able to change your situation in your life, or do you want to be able to change your situation in your life? In order to get outcome number one, where you don't have to change, or where you don't change your life, I guess the benefit is you get to be comfortable, but really fuck that. Who wants to live in their comfort zone? Versus the cost of having the freedom to change who you are requires you to get uncomfortable, take ownership, be responsible, and realize that no matter how much it seems like something's not your fault, at the end of the day, it is your fault. Because you could throw somebody who has a victim mentality and somebody who has a proactive mentality into the exact same situation. The victim will become a victim of it. The proactive person will walk away. So you look at Dan, he could be complaining that all that shit happened to him, but instead he's out there fucking leading people and making a difference in the world.
Red pill, blue pill, right?
Yes.
Red pill, like see a problem come towards you and you shrink and you retract and you say, fuck this problem. this isn't how it's supposed to be, and you retract and you retreat, and you tell yourself a story and say, oh shit, it's this happened to me because of this and that. Or you can begin to look at every single problem inside of your life as some sort of teaching, like some sort of lesson to begin to learn and grow from and take ownership of, in order to guide you in the direction that you want to move towards. Because, you know, living in blame, and a lot of people do, living in blame, it's not allowing you to move forward, you know, because you're staying stuck where you are, and in this bubble where like every problem that comes towards you is being bounced off this bubble onto the external factors. And it's like, you're just staying there and it's comfortable. And if you want to live a comfortable life, then, and you're happy living a comfortable life, then amazing. But if you're not, then it requires you to take ownership and take off the mask to move forward.
100%. Yeah. And that bubble of comfort, it's funny because it's a bubble that protects you from the discomfort of the outside world, but it's a bubble that keeps you trapped and prevents you from expanding. And it's kind of like the analogy earlier, like it's that shining armor, but you keep growing in a negative way until, you know, you're overweight or you're unhappy or your problems have grown to a level where even the bubble starts to become uncomfortable. And that's a concept that I call comfortable depression. Because comfortable depression is this place where you have put yourself so much in a rut of habit that your entire operating system is you blaming things on external circumstances, having no power to change your situation, and just living a day in and day out existence that's depressing, that has no growth or progress and nothing exciting to look forward to, but maybe getting wasted on the weekend only to go into a week that sucks. But like Dan said, change happens in an instant if you believe it happens in an instant. And I know that the people who are stuck in that rut of comfortable depression, or who are just in any kind of depression or a negative self-image, are going to find it hard to believe that change can happen in an instant. And here's the thing. We have proven by actually working with people and showing them that change can happen in an instant. If you look at various different examples throughout different people's lives and history, change really does happen in an instant. Like, how many times have you seen, even in movies, right? But even, and in real life as well, where somebody will have an epiphany or a moment, an awakening moment, as I call it, where you truly do awaken yourself. And that's the moment you put yourself on the awakened path, which is what I teach people is, as you awaken the different parts within yourself and realize that your mindset determines everything, and that you can move forward, you can change, you start to change. Now, I already know what some people are going to say. Some people are going to say, well, maybe that's possible for them, but it's not possible for me. And I challenge you to question that and say, is it only not possible for me because I say that it's not possible for me?
Is that belief useful?
Exactly. Is that belief useful? How does that belief make you feel? What's the opposite version of that belief? How does the opposite version of that belief make you feel? Can you find any evidence for the opposite version of that belief? Was there a time that maybe you saw the concept that change can happen in an instant happen negatively for you? Well, if it's happened negatively for you, then it can happen positively for you too. Things always work both ways.
100%. That's really profound what you just said there. Amazing.
Pain gains.
I love it. Yet we live in a world where, hey, take a shake, take a pill, jump on this diet, problem solved.
Exactly. But it's not. So, Dan, I really enjoyed so far this podcast. What are the thoughts do you have for our viewers at home?
I loved it. I really, really loved it. And my piece of advice, if you're watching this right now, is make sure you do your homework. If you're looking to get another coach, you know, whether it's Munir, whether it's someone else, maybe you need to go and research and make sure that these people aren't out there to rip you off, because the fact of the matter is right now, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, you know, it's driven by sloth, by greed, by profitability, where most coaches don't actually give a shit about their clients' results. And so, you know, people are just ruining your metabolism. The only reason why all of these quick fix diets work is because they starve you, where you're eating next to no calories, but what it's actually doing, it's fucking your resting metabolic rate, where that's why you're putting the weight back on as soon as you stop, but you think it's your fault when it's not. These things are just designed to make you fail, because if everyone succeeded on these quick fix diets, this whole industry would go under. And so basically myself and Munir here, like, we're here to fucking flip the fitness industry on its head and say that a lot of the things that the weight loss industry is telling you is a lie. Like, it is a lie. And if it was the truth, wouldn't everyone be successful? This is why they keep bringing out new products, new diets every single year, because people are failing on the existing ones. So they have to bring out a new product to sell people on the next magical solution. And I really hope that, you know, if you're watching this, it opens up your eyes to see that, fuck, like, it does take so much more than just here's a diet, here's a nutrition plan, here's an exercise program. It starts internally. It starts by having a coach that actually cares, that can coach you through the right habits, routines, rituals, and having the environment to allow you to shift your identity and to raise your standards, to know that, you know, these things are truly possible for you.
100%. And for those of you guys out there who are like frustrated and who are watching this and who may be thinking, yeah, that all sounds nice, but I don't know if I'm capable of it, you absolutely are. And until you truly get clarity and you get a breakthrough on your situation, and we look at the things from the surface level, which is what we just talked about, metabolism, right? Like if you have a crash metabolism, then you are going to struggle to see progress both with muscle gain and fat loss, because the faster your metabolism, the faster changes happen within your body. But we also got to look at your mental metabolism. How fast can you make changes? Do you believe that change can happen in an instant? And then, of course, the deepest level, your identity, what is truly governing your behavior at the deepest level. When we fix your habits, we fix your mindset, we fix your identity, that's when you actually start to move from a place of scarcity, seeing limited results, not being successful, not feeling successful, being depressed, anxious, whatever else you're going through, to a place of actually loving yourself, being self-confident, having a positive self-image, and actually having the right things happen for you because you choose to make them happen for you and believe that they're possible. That's when change actually happens. So anyways, guys, thanks so much, Dan, for being here. I always love having you on here. I hope we can do another one.
Thank you, man. My
Absolutely.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
So for those of you who are watching in either the live version or on replay, comment down below. Let us know what questions you have for next time, and we'll be happy to get to them because it's always a pleasure. So once again, Dan, I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day, and thanks again for being here, brother.
Catch you soon, brother.